Perverse incentive, from Wikipedia, the free encyclopedia. In economics, a perverse incentive is an incentive structure with undesirable results, particularly one where those effects are unexpected and contrary to the intentions of its designers. The results of a perverse incentive scheme are also sometimes called Cobra effects, where people are incentivized to make a problem worse. This name was coined by the economist Horst Siebert in 2001, based on a historically dubious anecdote taken from the British Raj. According to the story, the British government, concerned about the number of venomous cobras in Delhi, offered a bounty for every dead cobra. Initially, this was a successful strategy. Large numbers of snakes were killed for the reward. Eventually, however, people began to breed cobras for the income. When the government became aware of this, the reward program was scrapped and the cobra breeders set their snakes free, leading to an overall increase in the wild cobra population. This is important because a perverse incentive is not intentional a lot of the time. During what we refer to as the utility meta in Siege, there was a heavy emphasis in the balancing to really buff a lot of weapons, which, oddly enough, made the utility meta heavier. This was because most operators had very strong guns. Now, if everything is overpowered, nothing is overpowered. So if every operator has a good enough weapon for about any engagement, people are going to rely heavier on utility. During the TDM meta, that was when most people had really dog shit weapons, and the only characters that had good weapons were being played very frequently. Despite the fact that during the TDM meta, utility was arguably at its peak effectiveness. If all weapons are very powerful, it will lead to a utility meta. If all utility is very powerful, it will lead to the TDM meta. So what is the solution here? Well, the solution isn't to nerf everything. It is actually to leave everything that is good as is, other than very few exceptions that are just extremely overpowered, like the current Blackbeard rework that is, how do I say it? Bullshit! The correct approach to this would be to only nerf very few exceptions, and instead buff the underperformers for the reasons that they are underperforming. They may have a really nice gadget, but it's not fun to play them if they have a really shit gun. And vice versa. Now, this information can be very easily conveyed to Ubisoft. You could immediately tell after the guy known as Spades made very good quality videos on this exact topic that Ubisoft went into full force and actually made changes. He even mentioned it in one of his videos. However, what else does Ubisoft hear? What else kind of feedback are they retrieving? Retrieving? Or you mean receiving? You fucking read. They're hearing, stop complaining, by the masses, the normies, the people who do not have taste and do not care in this hobby. Whenever Ubisoft hears from the majority of these people that everything is fine and people are just complaining, plus they love X, Y, and Z, Ubisoft hears, this is fine, this person is just complaining, I love X, Y, and Z. In reality, most of these people do not give a shit, or they just do not have standards, so they shouldn't be talking to begin with. These tourists are only here because they want to be part of this community, I think. I'm not really too sure. I can't really get into their mind. I don't think they have a mind. Nor do I, but that's besides the point. Whenever the masses have conflicting opinions with the correct people, it just reinforces the notion that the correct people are actually wrong. Because the masses go by the assumption that the popular opinion is correct. This is in human nature, of course, as if everybody says the sky is blue and you never walked outside of the cave, you're going to assume the sky is blue, and 9 times out of 10, it's going to be correct. However, if people do not venture outside the cave and they say the sky is red, well, that's still incorrect opinion. Now, do these people who say the sky is red give a shit about what color the sky is? No, they do not. But if you dare imply that the sky is blue, you're in the wrong, buddy, because we have the correct opinion. Well, why do you have the correct opinion? Because, the majority of people think this. You're an outcast, buddy. But how does that make you wrong? I seriously do not think they can fathom the idea that the majority opinion is not actually true. Now, this wouldn't necessarily be a problem if everybody thought the sky was red, because at the end of the day, who is that affecting? Until they reinforce the idea the sky is red. They hold authority on this opinion. Now, I really shouldn't have to say this to you things, but why the fuck would you hold authority on a subject in which you do not understand, you do not care about, and or you do not have the info on. Of course, we know the reason why they must hold these opinions. Because any negativity is bad, so they must be positive. They must keep out the negative opinions. Now, some would say this is gatekeeping, and I would argue, yeah, I'd say it's gatekeeping. Now, what's wrong with gatekeeping? Nothing really. However, these same people will try to accuse you of being a gatekeeper if you dare say that you shouldn't keep in things like normies in your hobby, that you shouldn't let them in, despite their awful opinions. So then they will try to gatekeep you out with your negativity and your evil critique and care about the hobby. So, let's get this straight. The gatekeepers will get mad at you for gatekeeping because they're trying to push you out of your hobby by gatekeeping. Fucking genius. And these are the same people trying to tell Ubisoft everything is fine, while, in fact, everything is on fire. Burning, being fucking scorched by the sun's fucking might, being lit on fire with a flamethrower, and then thrown into the fucking inferno of hell. To say everything is on fire would be an understatement, and yet these people insist that the room is cold. And anybody complaining about the temperature being too hot is just whining or complaining, which doesn't really necessarily avoid the issue. It just says truth. Yeah, we're whining and complaining, but why are we whining and complaining? Are we going to address that? No, you chud. No, why would we address that? Why would we address that? Plus, you're complaining. Okay, well, why am I complaining? Well, it's because you're complaining. Why am I complaining? You guys are being negative. Why am I being negative? Have you ever seen the scene from Idiocracy where they're in the room and they're talking about Brondo and they're like, that's what the plants crave. Okay, but why do the plants crave it? Because it's got electrolytes. Okay, why does it got electrolytes in it? Because it's what the plants crave. It is the exact same thing going on here. These people that fucking hate you want you out of your own hobby so they can take it over. These tourists want to gatekeep you out of your own hobby for caring about it and being negative. A hobby in which they do not care about, so they shouldn't be gatekeeping it, but they still are. Yet these people who gatekeep more than we do, by a long shot, insist that they care, they do not care, but they care, but they do not care. They will get mad at you for caring, or not caring, it kind of depends on the day. And then, with this gatekeeping, they will then get mad at you if you try to gatekeep them out. And again, Ubisoft will listen to these people, if you can call them people, because these are the masses. And 9 times out of 10, the masses are correct. Because that's the truth, statistically speaking. Again, what changes do we see being made by Ubisoft? Statistical changes. Changes based off of a chart. You cannot have an operator in your game be underplayed, because that's bad. Why is that bad? Well, because it's bad. Why is that bad? Because it's bad. Are we going to explain why somebody not being played all the time is bad? No, we will not. Because these changes are not based in reason, or in them playing the game. They're based on a statistics board. They're based on a chart. They're based on where an icon is placed, based on 2 statistics that have no context. I am sorry that Melusi is not played every single fucking round, but on the first floor of fucking house, I'm not going to be playing Melusi. This may be a shocker. Now, why would I not be playing Melusi? Well, because her gadget can be easily destroyed. She has a nice and solid gun, but at the end of the day, what am I supposed to do with her gadget? Why wouldn't I just use barbed wire on another operator and use a different gadget for stalling? At the end of the day, Melusi is an operator for stalling. And there are much more powerful operators for that in certain scenarios, like Tachanka. However, Melusi is a one-and-done kind of operator. This is the difference between Doc and Rook. Think about how Melusi places down her gadgets and then can just walk around freely, and ignore it. However, Tachanka has to actively shoot out his fire to deny an area, to stall the enemies. Similar to Doc, how Doc is you have to aim and very, very accurately hit your teammate to heal them up, at the reward of having way more potential healing value than Rook, who just places down his gadget, and then now he can walk freely, and everybody has armor now. Is there necessarily anything wrong with one being picked over the other more often? No, because it's more of a call to scenario. It's more of a, well, I'm a bad player, so maybe I'm not going to pick Doc, maybe I'll pick Rook so I don't die and waste my healing on nothing. Maybe I will not pick Tachanka, but I will select Melusi so I can stall them with a gadget and not have to rely on me being alive because I suck. And vice versa. Well, since I'm good, I will play Tachanka and I will stall this area. Or I'm good, so I'm going to play Doc and be able to get more healing on my teammates. Which is how it's supposed to work. There's supposed to be different operators that do the same thing, but in different ways, for different playstyles. Different playstyles, different objectives, different ideas, strategies, different players. What is wrong with a small minority of players selecting one operator that doesn't really get played often? Why would you need to buff that? Because now, what you're going to do is whenever you buff that operator, now they're overpowered as fuck. The minority of players who already like the operator didn't need this buff, and now their favorite operator is getting banned. This is what happened with Thermite. Thermite has always been my main. Now he gets banned. A pretty good majority of the time. Now you might be thinking there's better hard breachers. You have Ace, Hibana, and Maverick. Which, I would argue, calls for more of a scenario-based thing, but who cares? Anyways, with the buff that Thermite got, he now has a secondary shotgun and an extra fucking charge. Now, why did he need this buff? Oh, because he wasn't being played as much as the other operators. Why does that matter? Because a statistic told him so. Despite the fact that I thought that Thermite was a bit too overpowered at the time before the buff. His gun was extremely solid and required no skill to use due to its extremely low recoil. And he opened up so much fucking space in a wall, it would be impossible to hold the attackers out. You could just smoke it and go in and plant so much easier than an Ace hole or a Hibana hole. Or you could spend an hour and a half trying to open up a Maverick hole, but good luck with that. However, people didn't really play Thermite that often because it wasn't as convenient and safe as trying to throw down something like Ace or Hibana, who have much more solid weapons too. It is different play styles, different scenarios, different maps, different strategies, different players, all choosing what they see fit for the scenario. I picked Thermite because I like big fucking holes. I like being able to smoke it out and have a good area for my team to run in, get the plant down, and get the fuck out. People play Ace because you can get good sightlines into objective and get fragged while still hiding behind the cover of the reinforcement. People play Maverick because they want to do the same thing but behind even more cover and have very small peek holes. Or maybe they want to get rid of the bandits so Ace can throw down his shit or something, I don't know, whatever you want to play Maverick for. So the point I'm trying to make here is that, yes, they should buff the underpowered operators, but they cannot tell what the underpowered operators are who need to be buffed, because there is just operators that don't get picked as often, but are already powerful as fuck, like Thermite.